Number 1.
When I was in high school, I lived in a really small town in Texas. It was the kind of place where everyone was either related to each other or hated each other. I had no family there, so yeah, but I did have a pretty blonde girlfriend, and she was pretty hated for that too. Nothing major, just petty harassment. So that's why on Valentine's Day, my girlfriend and I decided to skip the school dance and just stay in and watch a movie at her house whilst her parents weren't in. Just better to avoid trouble. We borrowed her dad's car, a little Honda hatchback, and went into town. We stopped at the video store for a movie, and then went to Dairy Queen for some ice cream. We were heading home, and I need to mention that she lives in the complete boonies. Middle of nowhere, along a lonely road with no streetlights. So we're chatting, eating our blizzard, when all of a sudden a car comes up behind us. No big deal. What was a very big deal was that when the headlights flooded the interior of the car, I saw two hands from the back seat and a head coming from the hatchback part of the car. As soon as the lights hit, the head and hand retreated back down. A solid chill ran through my entire body. I slowly reached down and pulled out my pocket knife. She saw me and asked what was wrong. Loudly I said, "Nothing! I just have to stop at my friend's house real quick." She knew this was bullshit. I didn't have any friends. I pulled over at the next house that came up and jumped out the car, yelling at her to get out too. She jumped out in total confusion. I flipped the driver's seat forward and lunged into the back seat in full maniac mode. He popped up like a jack-in-the-box with empty hands waving, hey, what y'all up to tonight?" It was some kind of weird kid from our high school, who we'd never in our entire lives spoken to before. Ever. I said, "What the holy hell are you doing in our car?" His reply was, "I thought you guys were going to the dance, so I just thought I was just hitching a ride, you know?" We sat there, staring at him with our mouths wide open, wondering what to do. He tried to act really cool, and obviously we were in the middle of nowhere in some random person's driveway, so whatever he was planning was forgotten. We actually ended up taking him to the dance and dropping him off. The whole time he's telling us to come inside with him. Yeah, no. We dropped his ass off and noped out of there as soon as we could. Anyway, as he got out of my car, my girlfriend started to cry and shake. She was so freaked out. I hate that school.
Number 2.
When I was around 14 or 15, I would bike around with my 11 and 12-year-old brother and his friends, enjoying the summer with my brother and his group. I made friends with this cute boy, Dennis. We became fast friends, and we made a habit to hang out. He and I even went to the Valentines Day dance together, and we always got up to the innocent things that kids do. Bike around, tell jokes, hang out at his place, go for walks. He was the epitome of normal and charming. As we got older though, we drifted apart, going to different schools, and getting into separate groups of friends. And in the end we gradually stopped speaking to each other. Fast forward to the morning after my summer school party when I was 16. I heard a few gunshots in the neighbourhood area behind my house. Hearing gunshots isn't normal, but it's happened once or twice before, so didn't think much of it. I told my mum, and she said not to worry, so I didn't. But my mum ended up calling her friend, and her friend found out what was going on. Turns out it was a hostage situation. A guy had murdered a woman and sexually assaulted her child. A SWAT team or something was called to help. And you know what? It was Dennis. The same kid I used to hold hands with, laugh with. Someone who was really real to me, you know? Turned into a monster. He got put away. And it really rocked the teen community in our town, since everyone knows each other. Knowing Dennis before this really screwed with me. How can people seem so normal and end up doing things this violent? It's been 3 years now, and I hope he stays locked up.
Number 3.
This happened to me when I was about 13, and in middle school. I was living in a 3-family apartment building, and had just moved there a couple of months before this happened. There was my brother, my mum, and myself on the top floor, a man and his wife and their son on the middle floor, and Gary on the first floor. The family on the second floor were really nice people and great neighbours, but this story isn't about them. It's about Gary. Now, Gary was probably around in his mid-30s, and he was stuck in his teen years mentally. He was also a goth, metalhead type guy. At first, he was a welcoming neighbour, but it all went downhill from there. It was Valentine's Day, and I was just coming up to the top of my door when I see a bouquet of flowers with a card and a brown paper bag. I grab them before I unlock the door and go inside, wondering what it is. I sit them down on the table and do my normal after school things, and then I go to open the card. The card said, "Happy Valentine's Day. I'm madly in love with you. Love, Gary." There was also this giant Hershey's dark chocolate bar in the brown bag. Now, as a small 13-year-old girl, I flipped out. I called my mum right away and told her what had happened. She told me not to eat the candy bar, and she said she was on her way. She came home straight after that, and we called the landlord and the police. They both came around about the same time, and we told them what happened. Then they both went downstairs and talked to Gary, and said nothing could be done because he had mental issues. I was so scared to even be in my own home. The next week he started to stand outside and play his guitar and sing love songs up to our windows. He did this mostly at night, as I had school in the mornings. He would lay on a blanket in the front yard and, with his blow-up doll, dress it up in an outfit that he saw me wearing one time. He would lay out there and pretty much molest this doll right in front of me and look up at my windows as he did this. We called the landlord and the police again, and again they did nothing about the situation. He would try to invite me into his apartment when I would come home from school. Luckily I had a friend that lived on my street, and I would have them walk me to my apartment door. We moved a couple of months later. He continued to play his guitar outside and would constantly molest the blow-up doll as things got creepier and creepier. But I'm glad we got the hell out of there.
Number 4.
Back in 2004, I was living in Portland, Oregon, attending college. I was sitting home one night, writing my last research paper for the term. I had my Yahoo Instant Messenger up, chatting to a few friends, when a message from someone who's not on my list pops up. "Have you ever thought about suicide?" Okay, weird. But hey, it's almost midnight on a Sunday, and stranger things have been asked of me before. Can I see your tits, etc. So I messaged the stranger back for kicks. Sure, who hasn't at some point? Why? Well, asking that question opened a Pandora's box. He battered me with questions about how I wanted to die, why did I want to die, would I want to die with others, etc. Obviously, getting creepier and creepier as the conversation continues. But I play along, assuming the guy is just screwing around with me. Asking his name, and he says it's Jerry. And I ask to see a picture. He sends me to a profile picture on Hot or Not and asks me if I think he's good looking. I tell him, yeah, sure, you're cute, whatever. He asked to see a picture of me. I sent him a random photo of a girl on my MySpace. He tells me he thinks I'm 10. Awesome. The conversation continues. He's sick of life, and he hates how women don't seem to be attracted to him. So he wants to end it all. I tell him what you're supposed to say to people in this situation. Relationships are nothing, you're more important to the people in your life, don't do it, blah blah blah. I'm not heartless, but I just don't feel like talking to someone on and off a ledge at 1 AM now. Jerry tells me he's met a lot of women online that also want to kill themselves, and that he's planning a party for Valentine's Day, which is a month and a half away from now. So everyone can come out to his house in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and do it together. He asked me if I'm interested in joining. I say, yeah, sure, but I make an excuse that I don't have a car to get down there. He tells me that there's a few women from Portland coming down for it, and one of them has a van. He's sure I can catch a ride. He says he's built a beam from his home that will hold up to 50 bodies at once, but that I shouldn't wear shoes because they'll weigh me down. By now, yes, I'm starting to realise that this guy is acting very serious, and this is, in fact, not a joke. So I start asking him specifics. What's his address? What's his full name? Who are the women travelling from Portland? He tells me their names, and that one of them is bringing her 5 children too, and that they all want to die as well. Huge red flags are coming up at this point. So whilst I'm chatting with him, I called a friend of mine back home in Eastern Oregon, who works as a 911 dispatcher. She's actually at work when I call her. After telling her the whole story, she advises me to hang up and call the Portland Police Department right away. So I keep talking to Jerry and call the Portland Police. They send 2 officers out, and about an hour later they're pretty much laughing when I explain to them what's going on. I print out our chat log, give them the guy's full name and address. I've already verified it through Google as it being legit, as far as Google can, and they tell me just to quit talking to him. Simple as that. And then they go about their business. Don't I feel stupid now? I call my friend back home and tell her what Portland PD did, and she just said to keep an eye out on things, if he keeps talking, just to keep saving the conversation. I go on for another 2 hours, and things just get to the point where I can't handle him anymore. He's battered me with questions from how I want to die, wearing clothes or naked, do I want to have sex before or not, would I have a problem killing kids before, would I want to hold hands with others whilst we're hanging. Finally I just told him I'd be in touch closer to Valentine's Day. For the most part I laughed it off with some friends, because Portland PD never got back to me about anything, so of course I assumed it ended up to be a very strange prank. Fast forward to the 10th of February 2005. A friend of mine calls me when I'm on campus on my way to work and tells me that some guy in Klamath Falls has been arrested for trying to set up a mass suicide pact for Valentine's Day. I'm floored. I run to my office, log into a computer, and sure enough, it's everywhere on all news forums. Gerald Crean, arrested for plotting mass suicide on Valentine's Day. My friend from back home sees the news and calls me, and tells me that I need to call Portland PD back and tell them that I called this in December. I make the call, and about an hour later 2 FBI agents have come to pick me up. They take me home and take my entire computer to be analysed. We sit in the living room and I'm questioned over and over about my involvement, and if I was really planning to commit suicide. I keep telling them over and over that I just talked to the guy as a joke, thought of it as some kind of prank, that I only called the cops because he started talking about this woman from Portland bringing her kids in too. And I thought I'd given all the information to Portland PD back in December, so how was I supposed to know they never did anything about it? Which they didn't. They sat on it and probably shredded it. The agents tell me the story has gotten a lot bigger, and that Crean had contacted hundreds of people. At least 30 had agreed to come on Valentine's Day to his house to commit suicide together. There was this one woman. Her parents found some emails between he and she and called the police. That's how they finally got involved. Not from me, nearly 2 months ago. This happened less than a week before Valentine's Day. I dread to think what could have happened, because it seems like no one cared what I said.
Number 5. 15 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I worked for a large department store. I worked there for a couple of years and soon became familiar with certain customers. In my experience, I always remember the angry and weird ones. There was one customer, a middle-aged gentleman, who would dress in a 3-piece suit, carry a red briefcase, and wear a Panama hat. It was because he was dressed so eccentrically that I remember him. I would occasionally see him in the store,
and he used the same bus service as me, so I thought nothing of it. It wasn't until I moved house I noticed something weird was going on. I used to live in a small town, but moved to the centre near the high street. You could see where I lived from the bus stop, and that's when I started receiving random anonymous cards, especially on Christmas and Valentine's Day. The cards would contain a poem and a red rose. What really creeped me out was that they were hand-delivered. After receiving the Christmas card, me and my family were extra vigilant on Valentine's Day. And sure enough, that evening, an envelope appeared through the front door. My dad ran out the door to try and catch who delivered it, and saw the eccentric customer from work walking right up the high street. The way my dad described him, there was no mistaking it was him. After that, I noticed this creepy, eccentric old guy everywhere. He would come into my store up to 4 times a day, every day, and never buy anything. I was employed in the lingerie department, making this extra dodgy. I used to run and hide in the changing rooms if he showed up. I worked shifts, and you don't always finish at the same time. This creepy guy would deliberately miss several buses to ensure he was on the same bus as me. After I left the store and got a job somewhere else, I discovered he lived locally, was married, with children and grandchildren, and was unemployed, which would explain how he was able to show up at the store every day, all the time. But it didn't even stop when I changed jobs. He found out where I worked and followed me there. This went on for years. He did loads of creepy stuff, to the point that my friends actually began to notice him. It wasn't until I got an office job away from the public that the stalking finally stopped. I get creeped out just thinking about it. I just hope he's not stalking some other young girl. Got something you want to share? Be sure to leave it in the comments or send us an email. Remember to like and subscribe for future videos. Thanks for watching.